There comes a point in personal growth where you realize that clarity doesn't come from reacting harder, it comes from stepping back. So, today we're actually talking about the law of detachment and how stepping back helps you reconnect with your truth.
If you're actively seeking ways to build your mental toughness, navigate life transitions with grace, or simply find inspiration to keep moving forward, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking. My name is Yvette and I'm here with my co-host Cat. Today we're actually talking about the law of detachment, not as a way to shut down your feelings, but as a way to step back from that reaction and actually see your life more clearly.
Mm, absolutely. So, the law of detachment, I think this is something that people get very confused around, honestly. Detaching from things is not the same as not feeling and not the same as just ignoring stuff. There's actually a skill to it, isn't there?
Oh, there is a skill to it. And I find that the more you have a really good relationship with yourself, the better you're able to see things for what they actually are and not react to them. And then you end up responding to them. And really, I suppose that law of detachment it's really about understanding yourself better, being able to take a step back
Mm,
and look at a situation for what it is, or even look at how you are responding internally
yeah,
to a situation. So you may have some external circumstances that are happening in your life that are causing a lot of stress. And rather than allowing that stress to just totally overtake you, you take a step back within yourself, see it for what it actually is, recognize it for what it is. And it's almost like observing it go through you, but not attaching to any of the thoughts.
yeah,
Because it's when we attach ourselves to the thought that we start getting into the spiral, or the monkey mind starts creating a
yeah,
story around it.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and it's something that I try to do on a regular basis, and it's definitely something I have not mastered by any means,
Mm,
but I practice it a lot, and I do notice that when I do that detachment and step back, I see things very differently because I'm actually not caught up in the actual stress of it or the fear of it or whatever it may be. So
mm.
yeah, it's a very powerful little tool, that one.
It is powerful and it all happens inside the theatre of your own mind. Nobody needs to know what you're doing or how you're managing it. And it's something that you can actually do in any situation. That's the beauty of it. And I think it makes you stop and examine the lens through which you are looking at a situation, because we've all got biases. We all live in a place of emotion. We've all got biases. And this is a really good process that allows you to train your mind into, well, I mean, look, we're both empaths. I've struggled in the past to sit in a place of tension, particularly if it makes other people feel uncomfortable, because I think, oh, I shouldn't be making people feel uncomfortable. But actually, sometimes sitting in a place of detachment when things aren't going your way, if other people feel uncomfortable because you're taking time to observe and understand the situation and have a really good think about it, can actually be very useful because it makes
Mm.
everyone else stop and think, oh, okay, let's pause, let's slow things down. Maybe we won't do that because we're dealing with a Zen motherfucker.
And that has actually been my experience with it at times as well, when I have done it in situations where I've been around people that there's a little bit of friction and you're not actually attaching yourself to the friction. You have taken a step back and it's like the observer, you're just observing everything and even observing yourself.
Mm,
And when you do that, it puts you into a position of, it's not power, but it's more, you are empowered. You have more
yeah,
confidence in that situation, and people pick up on that vibe. So then they tend to relax because they see that you're relaxed and you're not reacting.
yeah,
And it's interesting because it's in our reaction to a situation that will cause more tension.
yeah,
And if we don't react and we just kind of respond, and as the observer, we talk about that detachment, that's really about observing, and allows you to witness your thoughts, the emotions, the patterns of behavior that are actually going on without actually becoming them.
yeah,
And that means you're not reacting. And then you can go, well, oh, I can see this happening. Well, I choose not to react that way. I'm actually going to respond this way.
Yeah,
And then the conversation, if you're having a conversation with someone that, if there's been a bit of tension, does calm down. And
it
they tend to
does.
go,
Yeah, you
oh,
de-escalates it.
okay,
Yeah.
because they pick up on you. So detachment really creates space between you and whoever you're actually interacting with,
Mm.
and even yourself if you're in a spiraling moment. So
It's
it's
really
pretty,
good. It's
yeah, it's a
really
very
good if you're an
powerful tool.
anxious human. If you're an anxious person, detachment, learning the law of detachment is superb because things are going to happen, obviously. And when you're an anxious person, you get worried about what, say you're in a sticky situation, you're worried about what the outcome will be. You might start talking a million to one, just to try and resolve everything. And in your mind, you're doing that whole 20 chess moves ahead, trying to make things work or trying to control things. When you move into a place of detachment instead, you accept, firstly, I have no control over the outcome, but I
Mm,
do have control over how I will respond to the outcome. And when you slow your thoughts down and detach, immediately you've got more clarity and you can see clearly what's going on. So if the outcome isn't what you were looking for, automatically you're not as devastated, you're not as emotionally in it, and you will recover from whatever that is much quicker because your brain remains engaged and you don't just sort of have it. You're less likely to have a massive meltdown or lose it as well, which I first learned. I mean, they didn't call it the law of detachment. I first learned about this really working in probation parole and talking with a lot of very chaotically emotional, anxious offenders who committed a lot of offenses just from making really shitty decisions
mm,
in the moment. They were caught up in the spur of the moment. They were stuck in the middle of bad associates and anxiety and worry about the future. And they were doing they couldn't detach at all.
yeah.
They were right in it. And they would be around a lot of the time people that would manipulate them to stay in it so that you are more easily manipulated when you can't detach and observe. So it's a really great tool that is also a protective factor for you if you are around people who are trying to manipulate you, or if you're in a bad situation with people that don't have your best interest at heart as well.
Totally.
Mm.
I've actually found meditation has you hear about mindfulness in meditation, and really mindfulness is that thing of also becoming the observer, and the observer is really the law of detachment.
Yep.
That's really what it is you you sort of take a step back and you're watching the thoughts come through, because within
Mm.
meditation the idea is your thoughts will never stop. And because that's where I think a lot of people mistake it. They think that, oh, I can't meditate because I can't shut my mind down. And it's just, "Ooh," and it's like, it's not meant to shut your mind down. What you do is it calms the mind. So the fear and the anxiety will calm down the more you do it, and
Mm.
you get more centered. But the idea is you become the observer of it and you just watch the thoughts going by, and you don't attach to them. You actually are just observing them go through. And then that's what ends up quietening the mind down and you
Yeah.
become quite centered.
Yeah.
And it's through that process, because I've been meditating since being a teenager, that I have understood how to detach from
Mm.
certain situations. And that's not to say that I don't get caught up in stuff from time to time, because sometimes I do. But the more I remind myself about
Mm.
detaching,
Mm-hmm.
it'll stop me in that moment, and then I go, oh, okay, let's just detach from this. And when you actually detach from it as well, you're able to make more clear decisions as
Yeah.
well, because you're not caught up in it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not that you're abandoning yourself either. It's not that you're going, oh well, I'm not being true to the emotion. You're actually recognizing it for exactly what it is,
Yeah.
and then choosing not to react to it or allow that emotion to overtake you and ruin your day. So, for instance, say if you wake up in the morning in a bad mood, and a lot of the times, if we're not aware of this and we're not aware of detaching, we'll allow that bad mood to dictate our entire
Yeah.
day. And
Yep.
our day will just get shit. It'll just get worse. The day will get worse as it goes on. And then you
Mm.
get home, you just go, well, that was a fucked up day. And it really started because you woke up in the morning in a mood. Now,
Foul.
you
Mm.
you had a choice there to actually allow that mood to dictate the day for you,
Mm.
or to observe and go, I'm in a bit of a mood here. Okay, why? Why am I in a mood? Where has this come from? Did I
Yeah.
have a bad dream? Whatever it was. and then look at it and go, well, I choose not to allow this to take over my day. And I'm just going to observe that this is how I'm feeling and
Mm,
recognize it, but I'm going to reframe it. And so
mm.
how can you reframe it? Well, think of something else. Think of something that makes your heart sing. Think, or if you've got an animal, go and cuddle the animal. Or if you've got a baby, pick the baby up. You know, these are the things that will automatically change the chemistry within your body.
Yeah,
It'll just automatically flood you with
yeah,
really happy emotions. So then that changes that whole feeling, and you've actually changed the output of your day. So it's also bringing in the intention of your day as well. So by
yeah.
detaching, you can go, well, I purposely want my day to be like this. And so
Mm.
I intentionally am designing my day. So you're not going to go through your day being numb and
No, of
being
course not.
pushed
Yeah.
around by your mood.
Yeah, that's right. You're essentially stopping, and it's easy to do it in others, isn't it? It's so easy to observe in other people. Oh, I see what's going on there. Okay. Much more difficult to do it in yourself. In yourself, it becomes a skill that you must hone and ask yourself, for example, if you do roll out of bed in the morning and you're feeling terrible, usually for me, I'll go, oh, why am I feeling all stressed? Why am I snappy? Oh, okay, I've got that thing on today. I'm a bit nervous about it, or I'm a bit worried
Yeah.
about that meeting, or whatever it is. Okay, yeah, all right. And then you can sort of take a step back and detach. Now, I have used this technique in certain situations, and I've been accused of being cold when I've used this technique. Now, if someone says to you, you know, you're not showing enough emotional reaction when they're having a conversation, or you're being very cold or dispassionate, what they're basically saying is, I'm really struggling to manipulate you here. This isn't working well for me. Why are you being like that? It's good to sit back and say, I'm not going to give an emotional reaction to this situation. I'm going to consider my options. I'm going to look at the relationship that we've and the interaction we're having dispassionately with my detachment goggles on. And I'm going to think about, okay, how do I want to respond to this situation? That is how you stay in control of your life. You continue to enforce the boundaries that keep you safe, and you live your values.
Absolutely. It's interesting when you talk about that has been your experience with it when you're using the law of detachment with individuals. I have actually found my experience to be quite different. It's
Oh,
actually
really?
been people saying to me, "Wow, you listen really, really well." And you hear me because I'm able to repeat back to them
Hmm.
exactly what they've said to me. And because I've been listening, because I'm detached from it, I'm actually observing the whole thing. I'm watching their whole body language.
Yep. Yep.
I'm listening for the words that aren't actually being spoken through
Yeah.
their emotional reactions.
Hmm.
And I'm able to respond back to them with that. And I think that's what I do with coaching as well. So
Yeah.
it's,
Same. Yeah.
and that makes people feel very comfortable in my presence. They open up more, and they feel as if they are not being judged.
Oh,
So
sure. Genuine
yeah.
people, absolutely. I have worked with some people that are extremely skilled at manipulating the system,
Oh,
though.
yeah. But I'm just
And
saying it's interesting how the same, using the
yeah,
same technique, but the different responses that you're getting.
isn't it? Yeah,
And I think that it also depends on what you're projecting when you're actually doing that law of detachment as well. So
yeah,
it's quite it's yeah, I have found it to be a very powerful tool when utilized in a good way, in the
yeah,
sense of really hearing out people and not reacting to, like, especially even in situations when people have gotten fired up and I'm just sitting there going, okay. And
mhm,
yeah, I do agree with you. At first they get a bit, you know, narky, even more narky, that you're not actually reacting to them. And
mm.
then they start to calm down. So it's like they go through this, yes, I'm getting really pissed off that you're not responding to me. I'm getting even more angrier. Oh, okay. Oh, you're actually quite calm. All right. Now I'm
Yeah.
starting to calm down. And they just, and it starts to,
I used to call it the horse at the electric fence. Yeah. I mean, and I'm talking when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about, I'm working with some really nasty sex offenders
oh,
and
yeah,
and
totally.
people who could really manipulate and lie and had some serious stuff going on. And they weren't just mentally unwell people. Some of them were actually very malignant, awful people, because
Yeah.
those people do end up in the justice system,
Well, don't
unfortunately.
they, sociopaths fall into that category, do they
Yes,
not?
and psychopaths and sociopaths and things,
Yeah.
and psychopaths are the true psychopath is rare. Sociopaths are more common, but yes, particularly ones who like to offend against women when they when they attempt to manipulate you and you sit in the space of detachment and observation. Because essentially what you're doing in that role is you are assessing to
Mm.
see the levels of remorse and whether there's a risk to the community, right? What the
Yeah.
risk levels are. You're always observing that. That's what you're trained to do. So you do sit in that detached space. And yeah, I have found that people that really want to make a change in their life, that genuinely would like some guidance and feel as though they would like to make some changes, and they know they're not happy with their life, and then you get a good connection going with them, great, same thing,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
do that. But if they're there for other more nefarious reasons, they're here to break their probation officer, doesn't work. Like, nah.
So
Good
what
luck
are,
with that.
with yourself then, what have you found that when you've actually utilized the law of detachment in your own life, not necessarily with the offenders, etc., but in your own life,
Mm.
what are some of the things that you've started to see or experienced within yourself?
I think a big one, a huge one for me was my intimate relationship. So
Yeah.
when I was initially married to my ex-husband, we all get the love blinkers on, don't we? And when I was a lot younger, I didn't really know what I wanted or who I was properly. So I got married not terribly young, but in a place where myself, I hadn't done the work and I didn't know who I really was inside and who I should actually be with, because I just didn't have that knowledge, because that's essentially what it was. I didn't know my values. I didn't know who I was. Couldn't have picked. It wouldn't have mattered who you've given me. I wouldn't have done a good job of picking. That was on me.
Yeah.
So as time went by in that relationship, I knew I was unhappy, but I started to sit back and detach in that space as I learned more about watching his interactions and how he dealt with things, and I started noticing things that I would never have noticed if I'd have had my non-detached, if I was right in it. I'd take a step
Yeah.
back and think, okay, setting aside the fact that he's my husband, how is he behaving in this situation? Is he behaving with integrity? Is he telling me the truth? Is there trust here? Do I respect his behavior? And the answers were no. And that gave me the capacity to go, okay, there really is a problem here. And I kept observing and I kept looking. And people might go, well, detachment's not such a big deal. All you're doing is observing, but you're gathering data
But
is what you're
that's
doing.
what detachment is. It's actually observing, and it's
Observing.
not just observing other people, it's also observing yourself. And I think
How do
that's
I react to this?
yeah,
How
it's
am I feeling? Yes.
exactly. Like it's easy, as you said before, to observe others and to, form a judgment or an opinion or
Yep.
any of those things about other people. And also it's probably a little bit harder not to react when you're dealing
Mm,
with other people and to learn to
mm.
respond. However, within yourself, it's a harder thing to actually start to detach from your own behavior, to watch your own behavior and
Yeah.
observe your own behavior, and even do that at the end of the day, that self-reflection of how was my day? What would I have done differently?
Yeah, it's the
You know,
journey. It's the
yeah,
journey for you. That's
correct.
where the journey begins. How am I feeling when I observe this stuff? That was what it came back to for me in my intimate
Yeah,
relationships. How does this make me feel? Okay, I'm in a relationship. I don't feel good. What have I done to understand this situation? And it dawned on me over a long period that I hadn't had the skills to understand myself, which meant
mm,
that I hadn't been able to choose a good partner. So then when I went on to meet a new partner, I really stopped and listened to myself all the way through. Is this working for me? How does it make me feel when he does this stuff? Okay. Do I like and understand and respect his behavior? Is he showing me integrity? Do his values line up with me? And because it's very tempting at the start of a relationship when you're in love with somebody to just go, oh, it's so great. I love him. And we all have that feeling, but
yeah,
it's also really important to hold on to, okay, I've got my heart, but I've also got to sit in my mind and go, okay, oh, actually, yeah, no, you know what? He behaved really badly there. That wasn't actually cool.
mm.
That goes against my values. If you can do that in the start of a relationship, it allows you to, in any relationship or any workplace, you listen to the warning signs and you see the red flags. It just gives you that clarity. And then you don't waste your time pushing at a job where you don't fit or staying in a relationship where you know it's not going to work, because you know.
Well, I think it's the one of the things when you practice detachment, mindfulness, observation, all of those types of things,
Mm,
and you do it as do it initially as an experiment, so you can get
yes.
used to it and get. and play with it a bit and figure out what works, what doesn't work for you,
Mm,
and really start observing your own self in interactions and also how
yeah,
you talk to yourself, observing your own self belief, your own talk,
yeah,
that internal programming, the little monkey mind chatter. And what ends up happening is you're very quickly are able to identify what is fear and anxiety
yeah.
versus what is your intuition.
Yes. Oh,
And
that's huge.
where
Mm,
you're making up stories about something and turning a situation that hasn't even happened into something massive, and it hasn't even occurred because you're creating a story.
yep,
So you're able to recognize that. You're able to see patterns that are
yep,
going on versus truth.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that where you're creating a story and how often do you do that? And then you realize, well, actually, that's not truth. That's just me making up a story about something that hasn't actually happened. And
yeah,
how
yeah.
many of us go away after an interaction with a person? We don't really know what has driven them, why they behaved in a particular way, or we could even be slightly jealous of them. And we make up this whole reason of why we're angry with them, upset with them, or we don't particularly like them and we go, oh, that's because they're like that. But we really don't know what they're like. We really don't
Well,
know their
we
inner
don't. We're not
dialogue.
mind
Yeah.
readers,
No, we're not.
we
But
can't
we
tell.
make up a story around it, right?
It's a
And it's
cognitive
not
distortion.
necessarily true. It's
Well,
not
it's a
necessarily
cognitive
true.
distortion, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
we just sit there and we're looking at that person through our own experiences and biases. We have a
exactly. Our
fucking
own
clue.
belief systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, our own belief
And
systems.
it's a
Exactly.
complete waste of energy. It's a
It
complete
is.
waste of mental energy, and it's a really great way to tie yourself up in knots moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they do that to me? I treated them well, and I don't understand why they would do that. I just can't get my head around the thought process. I hear that a lot. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're
Yeah,
going to get
that's
your head
that's
around it or
their
not.
life. Let them sort themselves out. You've got your own life. And I think that's the other thing too, is when we are triggered by someone, is to go recognize that you've been triggered and then go, do I want to be again driven by the trigger or do I
Mm,
want to be guided from my inner voice, as in my
yeah,
deep inner voice, my inner guidance? And when you start working in that space more, you'll recognize triggers versus when you're actually being
intuition.
guided. Yeah,
Because
intuition.
that's really interesting. I've actually felt triggered by people initially. Then I've gone, do I want to be friends with them? I'm not sure. But then as I've gone on and I've just dipped my toe in the water, they've shown me in other ways that they've got integrity and respect and all the things that I value. And I've gone, okay, this actually isn't about them. This is me. This is a
Yeah,
me problem. Now,
yeah,
what is that? And then you sit there and go, oh, I get it. Right. Yep. Okay. Yep. And you might even have a conversation with that person down the track. And then you go, oh, okay. Yeah, it was me. As opposed to, I've had friendships where I've felt very comfortable with the person, and when they've challenged me, they've done it in sort of a sneaky, nasty way
oh
and
yeah,
kicked me when I'm down.
yeah,
I've had friendships like that where they've kind of I remember when I was going through my divorce, I had a friend and I would ring her sometimes just crying my eyes out going, "Oh my god, can I have some support, please? I'm really struggling here. Like, I'm going to lose everything I've ever earned." I was just in a panic and I didn't handle it as well as I should have because I didn't have the skills. And at one point, she said to me, have you ever thought that you might have borderline personality disorder? I went, what? She goes, have you
that's a
ever
big
thought that
call.
that's what you've got? And I went, I called you because I'm freaking out because I'm going to lose my house. I'm in the middle of a divorce and my legal fees are over $100,000 and I'm having a really hard time. Not sure why you would say that I've got borderline personality disorder. She said, oh, just, you're just so emotional lately.
Yeah. Have you seen what's going on in my life?
And I thought, and the way she said it, that was the wake up call for me. I thought,
Yeah,
oh, you're just sticking a knife in me at the moment because you've got the shits. You know what I mean? And then
yeah,
I started detaching from that friendship and I was looking at it and I realized she actually had a lot of issues with me. And when I really thought about it, they went back. I looked back through all the subtle digs and all of the
yeah,
different issues and comments that she'd made. I lived in a beautiful home that I'd built and I'd earned, good money and had my own business. And she would constantly be making little digs and I had ignored them in the past. And then when I detached and I looked honestly at my own reaction and at her stuff, I realized and I thought, okay, I can see this now. But it took that, sometimes it
yeah.
takes that. And then the detachment is it's your superpower. It's your
Well,
superpower.
I also see it in situations where when you're doing it a lot, when you have that, utilizing the law of detachment a lot, or the observer, becoming the observer, and you're doing it within yourself about you, and being really, as I said, mindful of how you are reacting to things, or where your emotions are, getting to know yourself really, really well, seeing your patterns, etc. And as I said earlier on, it actually helps you to connect to your intuition and your guidance.
Yes, it
You
does.
get really, really strong intuition and guidance.
Mm.
And then what will happen is when you do find yourself in a situation that is perhaps not so great, or you've met someone for the first time, and you get this really deep feeling of do not have anything to do with that person.
Yeah.
And you don't know why, you hardly even know them, but you just get
Mm.
this really innate thing of stay
Something
away from
weird.
them. Yeah, there's
Mm.
something weird there. And
Mm.
that is your intuition guiding you to say, "Do not connect with that individual." And
Yeah.
that's a very different thing to, um, judging someone, or, going, "Oh, I
Yes.
don't
No,
like them,"
that's
or things like that because of
mm.
who they are as a person and blah, blah, blah. It's a really it's a deep guidance that you get, and it's almost like hairs on your back raise
That's
up
your
and you go,
internal warning system, isn't it?
exactly. And
Yes. Yeah.
when you become the observer, that relationship with that inner guidance gets very strong.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, yeah. And it gives you a sense of almost danger. Yeah, you know what? I'm just not comfortable. And I've started using this more because again, I need to practice this skill a lot more. So I'm one of those people that will usually jump in really quickly and move along. Whereas now what I'm trying to do is step back and allow an awkward silence or an uncomfortable silence while I sit and process and feel in my body where that is. And then I slow my
Yeah.
breathing and I go, like I had a job offer to come and work and do some work for someone. And my body got so tense and I felt it in my throat, like, don't do it. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's really nice. I'll have a think about that and I'll get back to you. But then I sat and detached and observed myself and went, my God, my nervous system is going ding, 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 ding. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I thought about it afterwards and I was like, thank God I didn't do it. Whatever possessed me to even think or entertain that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And that's the thing, because sometimes we will do things, as I said, out of fear or out of anxiety, and we start making decisions based on
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And those decisions will never be the right ones for us. We think they are because we're trying to avoid whatever it is that we're anxious or fearful about, and we're trying to control the situation.
Mm,
And when you're able to take a step back and detach from that fear and anxiety and recognize it for what it is and go,
mm,
okay, I'm not going to make a decision until I am centered and I am calm within
yeah.
myself. I can see this for what it is. I
Yep.
recognize why I'm fearful or why I'm anxious. And then it's like, okay, I just need to get myself centered. And then from that place, I can then go, okay, is this actually the correct path? Do I need to go down that path? Or
Mm,
is there another opportunity that I need to look at that I'm not even open to at the moment because my fear and anxiety have been driving me? And that's the other
exactly.
thing, when you're able to calm those things down
Mm,
and be that, and detach from that and be that observer, all of a sudden you see these other opportunities
yeah,
or
exactly.
pathways open up for
Exactly.
you that you perhaps may not have seen before because you were so caught up over here. And so that's the other powerful thing about that detachment. It really helps you, it leads you to better
Yep.
decisions in your life,
Yep.
and you really are able to stop making those choices from panic or really
Yeah.
negative
Yeah.
emotional states, that type of stuff. So it's
Or other people's
very powerful.
expectations or knee-jerk reactions or previous patterns that we've, fallen into because other people have told us that we have to observe their rules that actually aren't
Yeah,
your rules.
yeah,
So detachment is I suppose it's the powerful step back that and it takes you from the macro or the micro view where you're kinda down here and blinkered to makes you go, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
now I can stop and look at the big picture," which is where people that make good decisions sit. You look at the overall picture and you're not down there in the moment with the person that's trying to pressure you into something or making you feel uncomfortable or the situation that you're in a panic about. You take a step back and then you can say, okay. And when you're calm, that's when you can really start thinking about what is it I want to do? And the frontal lobe remains engaged instead of going into your cortex into a panic,
Yeah. Well,
which doesn't
I'd
work.
like to use a little bit of an analogy of it's that helicopter view because when you're like say in a city and you're down in the streets
Yes.
of the city, it's just all you see are lots of people and
Yeah.
then you look up, there's tall buildings and things like that, and you just feel sort of like you're immense and you're stuck in
Super
your own
busy.
little world. And
Yeah.
then you take, a little bit of a view up higher, like you may go up into one of the buildings and you're actually able to see some of the people walking along, but you still got a slightly higher view. And the helicopter
Mm,
view is even higher, where you're seeing the
mm.
entire cityscape and you
Yeah.
can see people and cars and you can see the rivers and you can see the bridges and you can see everything and all the
Yeah.
different pathways. But you
Yes.
don't see that when you're down on the street level. And that's exactly the same thing here is when you are in the state
Yeah.
you're down on the street level. And when you're detached or the observer, you're up in that helicopter where you can see everything for what
That's
it is.
right.
And it's a
Yeah.
bigger picture, as you said, more strategic.
Yeah.
And you're able to really see the bigger picture, as they say. It's
Exactly. And
yeah.
once you lose sight of the big picture, that sends you into a sense of isolation, powerlessness, fear, worry, fear of the future, uncertainty. And once you start making decisions, once you're in that state, the decisions that you make will not be grounded. They will not be in alignment with whatever your values or your goals are. They'll just usually be a band aid measure to get you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And if you're just jumping from one stepping stone to the next in a roaring river,
Mm,
no idea what direction you're going. You might be going upstream instead of across. So, what you really need to do is detach, think, stop, take that step back. My husband, I think I've mentioned it a million times, has autism. Joe has
yes.
autism. He lives in a place of detachment. He lives there automatically, not because he's learned the skill. That's just how his brain works.
Yeah.
When I've said to him, gosh, such and such, blah, blah, I wonder why they did that. He goes, who cares?
It doesn't affect me.
Doesn't affect me. He always says, I don't let other people's behavior affect my behavior. If
Yeah.
I will pose a tough question to him, he'll stop and sit. And I'll go, what are you doing? And he'll go, I'm thinking. And 10 or 20 seconds later, he'll go, okay, I've given that some thought now. And this is what I think. Now that's just something that he does naturally. And it's actually very powerful to do that
Mm,
when you're having meetings or conversations with people. You're signaling to everyone around you. Everyone in that room knows if you're having a conversation and you stop and say, I'm just thinking about that. You're considering exactly what you're doing. You're clearly signaling to everybody that you're in that space of detachment, that you're
mhm.
really turning your options over in your mind and you're not willing to rush into anything. And you watch your negotiations and your interactions become more respectful.
Yeah. Totally. And a lot of it actually comes back to the relationship you have with yourself. That's
Yep.
one thing that we're always talking about. Everything that we do about the art of beautiful thinking is about helping you come back to having a really good relationship with you and understanding
Yeah.
yourself better. Because when you understand you better, you then
Mm.
understand your patterns, you understand where your fears coming out, your anxieties coming out, and also through understanding you, you're able to detach because you know yourself and you go,
Yeah.
this is where this is happening. It's when we don't know ourselves
Mm.
very well, when we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, that we end up being that reactive individual and constantly allowing our environment to dictate to us or our emotions and our thoughts that are on, they're just running wild and
Mm.
allowing those to run our life rather than going, oh, hold on, I do
Yeah.
have a choice here.
Yeah.
And when you step back and observe,
Yeah.
then you can really easily have that pause before you react. You can sit with it in the body, as you're saying, going, where do I feel this
Yeah.
in my body? And why is my body responding like this to a
Yeah.
particular
What is that?
situation? What is
Yeah.
that?
And you
And
may not know the answer in that
no, you
moment,
may not.
but
But
you
the
don't need to know
recognition,
the answer.
no, the
Mm.
recognition and the awareness
Yeah.
is where it starts.
Mm.
And that awareness
Mm.
is almost the observer, that's when you're being aware, you're being the observer. And then when you're the observer, you can go, I'm detaching. And
And that
so,
gives you so much that's how you build your self-trust.
Mhm.
Because when you're saying it comes back to being, knowing yourself and understanding yourself, it's also trusting yourself. And that comes from sitting in that place of listening to my body, listening to my mind, listening to my spirit. What am I doing? Okay, I'm going to attach, I'm going to hear, how am I reacting to this? Because this is where your true north compass is,
Mhm.
not out there, it's in here. And once you can really sit and detach and hear what's going on, you accept the input and the whatever the stimulus is, you're not reacting to that stimulus, you're responding to it through the filter of your own self-trust and your self-understanding and your values. That's how you stay grounded. That's how you stay, informed and in power in your situation. Now, things might not go how you want them to go, but at no stage did you sell yourself out, and you're always able then to move on freely and go, "Oh, well,
Yeah,
that's
let
okay.
that go. It's a lot easier to let go of,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
okay."
it's always a choice, like, when you're in a situation, you're choosing what to take on and what not to take on. Kinda
Yeah.
going, "Oh, okay, yeah, I may look into that a little bit more," or you may have a point there or, something like that. And
Mm.
then on other things, it's like, "No, that's your stuff, it's not my stuff, and I'm not gonna
What a
carry that."
powerful thing to say. What a
It's
powerful thing to do,
yeah.
I take no shit, but do no harm.
Mm. And to be able to walk away from any situation, or any feeling that you had that's pulling you down, and to be
Mm,
able to pull yourself out of it really quickly, or to be able to walk away from a heated discussion, without it actually affecting you,
mm,
that
mm.
that in itself, as you said, you can just move on to the next thing in your life without
Yeah.
being constantly pulled back to the
Yep.
past because it's already happened. And the thing about the law of detachment or the observer and mindfulness, it's actually about being present in the moment and observing who you are in that moment, who
Yeah,
you're
connecting to
being,
yourself.
what's
Yeah.
happening around you, and you're
Yeah.
just being present to it. Because
Mm.
there is no, when you're in the present, the past has happened, you can't change it. The future hasn't happened. And when the
That's still a
future does
possibility.
happen, it's still present. You're still in the present moment. So the present
Exactly.
moment is actually where the detachment happens. It's where the observer happens. It's where
And that's your point
mindfulness
of
happens.
power. That is your
Yeah.
point of power. The minute that you sit in that space, immediately, as you said, you may not have power over the situation, but you've got power over yourself. And then you choose your reaction or your lack of reaction or your, even if some, I mean, I can look back, a lot of this has really helped me. I've been quite savaged in a workplace, and it's really helped me to sit, like to revise that in my mind and sit into that place of detachment and then observe what I was doing and what
Uh,
the person was doing and why it happened that way, and understand that in actual fact wouldn't made any difference what I'd done either way. And I spent far too much time blaming myself and sitting in a place of emotional upset about the matter and taking it personally because I didn't know about detaching. I suppose in that moment, I'm learning skills all the time, detaching, sitting back and going, oh, okay, this is how this person operates. Then their values don't align with mine. This was never going to work out because this is not who I am. So that's fine. Move on. Let
yeah,
go.
and then you don't take it personally.
Don't
You
take it
don't hold on
personally.
to it, you
Mm.
won't spiral from it, and I think that's what happens with a lot of us. A situation occurs, and we take it personally, and then we
Yeah.
walk away from it, and we allow it to we keep feeding it. We keep
Yep.
feeding it
Yep.
with the story that we're telling it.
Yep.
We keep putting more fertilizer on it and keep
And it
feeding, feeding,
hurts,
feeding,
the
and
hurt
yeah,
keeps,
it
like,
does.
triggering you and bouncing it back and
Yep.
then stopping and making you second guess yourself thinking, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I'm just gonna fail." It's not, yeah, I mean, look, I'm totally guilty of that, and, it's something that you can work through and say, "Yeah, I just detach. It's fine. Whatever. Shit happens." And then it just gives you that, I suppose it sort of gives you a shield between you and the world, that allows you to go, okay, well, here's my boundaries. Here's what I'm going to do. And I'm protecting myself. I'm still engaged in the world around me. I'm still engaged in all of these interactions and interested and present, but I'm not going to
I'm not
allow it
taking
to
it on.
upset. Yeah, it's not going to affect my clarity. I'm going to sit with my body in safety. I'm going to observe the thoughts without attaching emotions to it. And I'm going to ask myself, what is actually true here?
Exactly.
Mm.
And it's as I said, it's one of the things that I will tap into quite a lot, when I'm actually in a stressful situation. I then, when I feel the
Yeah.
anxiety coming up, it's like, "Oh, okay." So I take a step back and I go, "Why am I feeling anxious here?
Yeah.
What's coming up here?
Yeah.
What's being triggered inside of me?" And then I see that and I go, "Okay, why are you triggered?
Mm.
Um, what are you taking away from this situation that you're holding on to, and
Yeah.
why are you holding on to it?" And so I ask myself these questions,
Yeah.
and the reason with the questions is because then you start to unravel what's actually happening,
Mm.
and you realize going, "Oh, actually, I'm making something out of this when there's nothing there to be
Yeah.
made of." And then I ask myself, "Well, what am I getting from that? What am I getting from
What
being
is my
anxious?"
payoff?
Because exactly, what is that payoff? And it could be that my body, because for such a long time in my life I have been anxious and my body's gotten used to that chemical rush in the body of anxiousness, and so it looks for it because it's going, "Well, I'm not getting
Yes.
that hit anymore."
Yes.
So it looks for it, so it tries to create that. So that's the other stuff to be mindful of and go, "Am I doing that in this situation?"
Am I
"Oh, yeah,
looking
I
for a
am.
big
I'm actually
dopamine hit?
my
Yeah,
body's
yeah.
looking for the rush here.
Mm.
Okay, what else can I give it then? Instead of looking for it there, I might go and hop on the rower for half
Yeah.
an hour to get it out of my system."
Go and lift
And,
some weights. I'll go and lift some
yeah,
weights. Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Like a
just and it's
beast,
that
like an
type of
absolute beast. Roar.
exactly, go, "Oh, if I had a punching bag, ooh."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, "Oh, you're on fire today." I'm like, "Yes, I am."
Exactly right. And that's how you get it out of the system, and but you've
Exactly.
gotta recognize it and go, "Oh, okay, I see what's playing out here. Let's make a
That's how you
change."
replace ultimately how you replace healthy habits with bad coping skills with healthy habits. So,
Mm.
I'm terribly guilty of it. And
Oh, I
like
think
I
we
said
all are.
the other day, sometimes in the past I'd go, "Fuck, I'm feeling this way. Quick, get me a glass of wine, fat glass of red wine, lovely." Because what that does is it switches off the monkey mind, so you don't have to hear it for the evening. It puts you in a place of detachment. That's what you're craving. You want to not hear all of the stuff that's going on in your head. But if you practice detachment as a skill where you go, "I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to observe and I'm just going to let those thoughts flow and I'm just going to listen to my body and consider things," you do detachment in a way that you are the master of it. You're the master of your own mind, you're the master of your own body. Whatever the outcome is to the situation, you have mastered that. I think Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Freedom practiced detachment like an absolute
Beautifully, yeah.
superhero, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Mm.
anyone that's watching, if you haven't read that book, so worth a read. Viktor Frankl was a psychotherapist who was captured by the Nazis. He would be on a table whilst they would do horrendous experiments on him. He was powerless, so he would lay there and he would take his mind to a place that he felt completely detached from the outcome. He would just deal with whatever it was later on, and he would just stay in the happy place in his own mind. And that was how he kept his sanity. Now, that's an extreme example, but there's a lot to be learned from that. I mean, the power of the mind is absolutely incredible.
Oh,
And if you can tap into it,
the mind is extremely powerful,
mm,
and when we actually put ourselves in positions of anxiety and fear and stress and, all
yeah,
that type of thing, and negative thinking and emotions, um, that that's a power in itself. Now
exactly.
imagine if you replace that with
Yeah,
the being able to be more empowered within your thoughts and being very clear with what you're choosing to take on with your thoughts, and removing those negative patterns with really positive,
yeah.
empowering patterns and things like that. Because
Rewrite the
the mind
script.
is extremely powerful. And there's
Rewrite the
been so much
script.
study on what the
Mm,
mind's capable of doing. And then when you connect the heart mind together, oh my
absolutely.
God. And that's what you're pretty much doing with detachment and
Yeah,
observation, is you're bringing the heart and the mind in, and you're
yeah.
making a decision from that place.
From
You're
that
not
aligned
making a
space.
decision
Yeah,
just from the mind.
yeah, yeah,
You're bringing in the heart into it, and you're able to that's why the intuition grows. That's why you're actually able to see truth in the situation
exactly.
without judgment.
Yes.
It's quite it's a talent we all have, and it's not something that only some of us are gifted with or anything like that.
No, no,
I
no, no.
believe it's part of our normal innate abilities. We have
Yeah.
just forgotten how to use it and how to
It's a
tap
skill
into it
set. It's a skill set. Hunters used to use it
all the time.
centuries
And in
ago,
fact,
all the time.
I think African tribesmen and that still do.
Yeah,
They
they
still use it
detach,
a lot.
they
Yeah.
assess, you detach and assess. Now, these days, there's a big thing. Oh, don't be judging, don't be judgmental. Well, I'm sorry, but the word judgmental just everybody makes judgments. We all, as human beings, our brain is constantly judging and assessing. It's looking when you're walking along, how deep is that step that I've got to step down? You're judging and assessing. How scary does that human being look? What kind of micro expressions are they giving me? Where our brains are wired to
Yes.
judge and assess. That's what we do.
Well, it's looking for
So
safety. It's always it's trying to keep you safe, but it
exactly.
was never meant to be the strategic decision maker. That was meant to be your heart, not the
Yeah.
mind. And when I
Yep.
talk about the heart, I'm not talking about the heart organ. I'm talking about your spiritual soul, the heart
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
who you are at the core of everything.
Yeah.
And that is meant to be the thing that directs you in life. And your mind is there to help you become like plan around that. Okay, so
I
I'm
think,
here to keep you safe with
yeah.
those decisions that you're making.
This is the
And that's it.
compass, this is
Yeah,
the engine room, you know?
correct.
Like, yeah, but we in our society today, we all live up here. We
Yeah.
very, very rarely travel back down here. And this is so overstimulated and bombarded from all sides with so many different opinions and ideas and so many rules and everyone telling you how to do things that people really struggle to figure out what the fuck am I supposed to do here?
Exactly. It's like, "Ah," and that's, and
Mm.
that goes back to our previous episode when we were, we're talking about all of the stimulus that we're getting externally. That's
Oh,
why the
yeah,
mind is just constantly,
switch
"Ah,"
off.
'cause and then the nervous system gets affected. And again, why does the nervous system get affected? Because we're doing everything from the head space and not
Yes.
from the heart space. When
Yep.
you bring the heart space into it, the nervous system calms down
Yes, it does.
because it's coming from a different place. But when it's
Mm.
coming from the mind, it triggers the nervous system,
Yeah,
totally triggers it.
constantly, constantly. And when it's non-stop and when there's no break, we're not moving our bodies enough and we're not getting outside and we're not sort of calming ourselves or grounding ourselves. I've been there. I've been there. You know, you're working in an office environment all day under artificial lights like computers with constant bombardment of data and information. You come home and then you're talking to your family and you're resolving this matter and you're doing that and you're doing this. And then you've got to cook and then you've got to clean. You're just constant, no time for yourself. I have lived that. And I tell
Yeah.
you what, it nearly broke me. It was exhausting.
Well,
Mm.
it is exhausting, and I think that's how most of us live. We
Mm.
live from that place, which is why I believe so many people are exhausted. That there's so much stress and anxiety in the world. There's so many people suffering from depression. Suicide rates are high. Majority of people are extremely unhappy in their workplace. Something like 75 or 80% of people hate their jobs, and
That doesn't surprise me.
you look at that and you just think, wow. And that's again, that's because we're all running our lives from here, and we're not going, okay, let's step back into here,
Yeah.
observe, detach, get really good with our inner guidance, and then come from that place when we're making decisions in our life, and then look at this and say, okay, now you can help me plan it.
Yeah.
But you're not the strategic decision maker. I'm the
Mm.
strategic decision maker.
I think
You
most
know?
people would think it was the other way around.
Yeah,
Most people would think that it's got to come from your mind and not from here. And yeah, that's what
yeah.
we've done. We've really just sort of we've shafted ourselves. You know,
We have.
Western world. We just totally, completely ignore all of this, what's going on in here, and that is the biggest problem. And so we're not saying everybody's just got to live a part like a communal life and go and live in a mud hut somewhere. What we're saying is it's time to start bringing back some of the really ancient knowledge that we know works back into our lives. And it only requires a bit of time each day, spending some time with yourself, starting a different practice, thinking about detaching when you're in a tough situation so you can make a good decision that's based in here, in harmony, rather than just rushing from one thing to the next and stressing out. Because once you start making decisions, because I've done it, like I said, I'm in the fuck up. I'm the president of the fuck up club.
I must be the
El,
vice president there.
El Presidente, yes, grand poobah of the fuck up club. So once you start making decisions from the place of shit fuckery, all following situations, scenarios, and events will continue on in the vein of shit fuckery.
They
That's
will,
that's how it
absolutely.
is.
And and I think it's really about going, well, how can I introduce a practice into my life? And as you said, it's really about pausing before you're
Yeah,
reacting, and start with 10 minutes. Start
yeah.
with doing
10
some
minutes a day.
insightfulness for about 10 minutes a day. If you're actually washing the dishes, rather than letting your thoughts wander off
Yes.
everywhere, stop and be present in that moment whilst you're washing the
Breathe.
dishes, and really breathe
Mm.
into that and go, oh, what does that detergent feel like on my hands? What does this feel like? what was I thinking and why was I thinking that? Like, where were my thoughts going? Like, become present in that moment. Feel
Yep.
your breath, really listen to your breathing,
Mm.
because we automatically breathe. The body's doing so much stuff without us actually paying any attention to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stop and pay attention to the body. What's it saying to you? Sit with it, sit within the body and observe
Am
the
I
thought without
thirsty?
attaching
Am I
to it.
thirsty? Am I hungry? This
Mm.
is a big one for me. Once I started doing mindfulness, I realized most of the time I was just wanting water.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm a water addict.
I will testify you are a water addict, but it's
I
good.
like my water. Yeah. So there's these simple practices that you can do, and that's just one of them. Just stop for in the moment and just become present in that moment
Yeah.
and listen to your breath, feel the breath going in and out of the body. As I said, if you're washing the dishes, be present there. Vacuuming,
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
When you're vacuuming, just
Yeah.
kind of be present in with the vacuum cleaner. And I don't mean going, I am one with the vacuum cleaner. It's more to do with where are your thoughts going? Are you present with it? What's that
Yeah.
vacuum cleaner feel like?
Are you going into a spiral of a
Yeah,
conversation that you
exactly.
had with someone yesterday while you're madly
Yeah,
vacuuming,
yeah,
or
so
are you just
observing the
breathing?
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
if you
actually
are
asking
struggling,
yourself, "Is that actually true?" Is there any truth there or not?
yeah.
And then just let the clarity come up, because it will. It'll
Yeah.
just arise.
And if you feel like what we're talking about is a big thing to do, and you're at zero right now, and you've got no clue at all how to begin that process, get the workbook, because it is literally it's $50. It gives you 12 lessons. It starts you from zero, from where you're going. I know these concepts sound great, but I've got no idea how to begin or how to implement them. It works you through 12 lessons. It starts you from zero. It talks you through every single step. Eva's written it brilliantly, and it teaches you to build on every skill as you go along, so that none of it is a mystery. And all the way through, you're getting these little arrows to the brain going, oh, okay. And your peace increases and your anxiety drops away. Definitely go
Yeah.
to our website and have a bit of a look, Art of Beautiful Thinking, and check out the Authentic Life Blueprint. It is just amazing.
And if you feel that you need that little bit more support with it, if you're kind of going, I want more than just the blueprint, you can actually get coaching with it. We have a coaching program designed totally around the blueprint,
Yep.
where I will guide you through each module, and we go deeper into conversations, places where you may be getting stuck. So
Yep.
again, the links are all down below. And it is the blueprint is a really good starting point. It's a
Brilliant.
great place to begin, because it's actually been designed for people on starting out on this path.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are other workbooks that'll be there in the future, but this is the first step, really.
Yes. The first step
And
to
it's
becoming
really
a
about the first step to coming back to yourself,
yeah.
coming back
Yeah.
to your authentic self. So yeah.
A long
So
way from being
really
a
hope
Jedi
you
master, but we're getting there.
exactly. Um, so let us know if you actually got something from today's episode. We would love to hear from you. Please provide comments below, and remember to subscribe to our channel as well, because that just helps us get the information out there even more. Let your
Absolutely.
friends and family know. It'd be
Mm.
fabulous. And we absolutely love and appreciate your support. So thank you so much. And
Mm.
remember to think beautifully and live brilliantly. But before we shut off, I just want you to have a think about this, that the law of detachment is actually not about caring less, okay? It's not
Mm.
about caring less at all. It's about seeing things more clearly through the lens of truth instead of reaction.
Mm. Yep.
And what's one thing that you can do this week to find yourself to just stop and pause in that moment?
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. Until next time, guys, take care. Cheers.
Bye.
We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes, or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family, and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.